In the icy, treacherous waters of the Southern Ocean, a 17-foot boat is tossed by towering waves, its crew desperately clinging to whatever they can for support. This is no expedition vessel, it's a makeshift lifeline crafted from the debris of their wrecked ship. The year is 1865, and 3 men, survivors of a shipwreck, are attempting a perilous 280-mile journey across the subantarctic seas in a boat they built themselves. Their survival depends not just on their will to live, but on their ingenuity. These men were not seeking adventure, they were simply trying to survive. For 19 months, they had been stranded on one of the most remote islands on Earth, the Auckland Islands, with no hope of rescue. The Southern Ocean's harsh conditions left them without any means of communication, no radios, no distress signals, and no GPS. They had to rely on nothing but their resourcefulness and determination to craft their own salvation. The journey begins in December 1863, in the bustling port of Sydney, Australia, where Captain Thomas Musgrave oversees the final preparations of the Grafton, a small 80-ton schooner. The mission, a speculative voyage to the Auckland Islands, where rumors of tin deposits offered the possibility of great wealth. However, the mission was a gamble. If the voyage failed, the price would be much higher than the financial loss. It could cost them their lives. On board the Grafton was a diverse crew. Captain Musgrave, a seasoned sailor with over 20 years of experience. François Reynal, a 31-year-old French scientist and metallurgist with a thirst for exploration. Alexander "Alec" McLaren, a pragmatic Scotsman. George Harris, a 25-year-old Portuguese common seaman with a knack for hunting. And Henry Forges, the youngest of the group, a 28-year-old Norwegian with mechanical skills but limited experience. Their combined talents would prove vital in the trials to come. The journey began smoothly, but as the Grafton neared the Auckland Islands, disaster struck. Gale-force winds and monstrous waves turned the seas hostile, and the Grafton was forced to take shelter in Carnley Harbour. But the storm worsened. The anchor failed and the ship was pushed onto submerged rocks. On January 3, 1864, the ship's hull split open, and the crew had no choice but to abandon ship. The men scrambled to the shore with what they could carry, some tools, a gun, a few supplies, and the ship's dinghy. Behind them, the Grafton was torn apart by the waves, and in front of them lay the barren, unforgiving terrain of Auckland Island. There would be no rescue. The island was isolated, uninhabited, and the nearest settlement was nearly 300 miles away across the deadly ocean. The men knew they had no time to waste. From the first night, they were already cold, wet, and exposed to the elements. But there was no room for despair. Musgrave immediately took charge, establishing order, and instilling the men with a sense of purpose. Survival was no longer the only objective. They would build, create, and thrive. The island offered few resources, but it did provide freshwater streams and dense forests of timber. Most importantly, a colony of seals populated the shores. François Reynal, with his scientific knowledge, recognized the potential of the seals for food, clothing, and tools. The men set out to hunt them using makeshift weapons and limited ammunition. The meat was their sustenance, the fat provided warmth and light, and the skins were used to create clothing. But Musgrave wasn't content with just surviving. The men needed a place to live, something more permanent than a camp. They began building a cabin using the resources at hand. They felled trees, gathered stones, and crafted a fireplace. Using Reynolds' knowledge and their limited tools, they created a forge and bellows made from seal hide, enabling them to repair and even forge new tools. They made soap from ash and fat, and ink from gunpowder and water. Nothing was wasted. By April 1864, their cabin, named Epigwait, was complete. Measuring 24 by 16 feet, it was insulated and well organized. The men now had a base from which to operate, a place to rest, and a symbol of their determination. They created a strict code of conduct, ensuring cleanliness and organization. Sundays were reserved for rest, and Musgrave kept a meticulous calendar to track the passage of time. Unlike other shipwrecked crews, who often descended into chaos and infighting, Musgrave's men worked in harmony. But even as they thrived in their new home, the men knew they couldn't remain on the island forever. They had to escape. The island's isolation and harsh conditions were unrelenting, and there was no guarantee of rescue. So, in the second year of their ordeal, they devised a daring plan to build a boat, not just any boat, but a seaworthy craft capable of navigating the treacherous waters of the Southern Ocean. The boat was constructed from salvaged timbers, sealskin, and iron nails, with tools fashioned from the limited materials they had. The men worked tirelessly, driven by the need for freedom. When it was finally complete, 3 of the men, Musgrave, Reynal, and McLaren, set off on their perilous journey across the ocean. Their boat, a testament to their skill and determination, carried them across one of the most deadly maritime corridors in the world. The 5 men, stranded on the Auckland Islands after a shipwreck, faced challenges both physical and psychological. The brutal winters brought freezing temperatures, darkness, and howling winds. The isolation weighed heavily on them, and it wasn't just the cold that drained their spirits. It was the crushing thought that they were cut off from civilization. George Harris fell into deep despair, unable to shake the sense of hopelessness. McLaren struggled with sleepless nights, the lack of rest wearing him down physically and mentally. Even Captain Musgrave, once a strong leader, confessed to moments of crushing despair. Yet, despite the toll it took, they found ways to cope. François Rel, the French engineer among them, took charge of keeping their minds active. He organized educational lectures and read aloud from salvaged books, helping them momentarily escape into another world. They invented games using seal bones, which provided mental respite. These small distractions became just as vital to their survival as the physical efforts of securing food and shelter. But as the months passed, another realization dawned: no rescue was coming. They had to save themselves. Captain Musgrave was the first to voice it: "We cannot wait for rescue. We must rescue ourselves." Rel had been considering this for months. He had a plan. The idea was audacious: to transform the ship's small dinghy into a larger, seaworthy vessel capable of crossing the dangerous waters to New Zealand. With no proper shipbuilding tools, limited materials, and no formal training, this was a monumental task. But Rel, ever the engineer, saw it as their only hope. The first challenge was to create the tools they needed. Using stones and clay, they built a forge. With it, they could heat metal to forge new tools and repair old ones. The first successful forging of a tool was a breakthrough, giving them the means to shape wood, a crucial step in boat construction. However, the project was fraught with setbacks. The boat was too small for an ocean crossing, and every cut and modification carried risks. They cut the dinghy in half and began extending it, but one mistake could ruin their only means of escape. Rel used his knowledge to design the boat, calculating buoyancy, load, and stress. They reinforced the hull, anticipating the violent seas it would face. By September 1864, nearly 9 months after the wreck, they began the construction in earnest. They scavenged nails and metal fittings from the wreckage, and when those proved insufficient, they forged their own from broken tools and salvaged ship parts. Seal fat and resin sealed the boat, ensuring it would be waterproof. But just as they made progress, a violent storm hit, flooding their shipyard and warping parts of the boat. For a moment, it seemed like all their efforts had been undone. Yet McLaren, with unshakable resolve, insisted, "Well then, we begin again." And they did. Within days, they had repaired the damage and built a drainage system to prevent future flooding. By March 1865, the pressure mounted. Winter was fast approaching, and another storm could destroy their work. They were physically weakened by the limited diet, but they kept working tirelessly. Musgrave's diary entries reflected the strain. "We work from dawn until our hands can no longer hold tools. Every day we remain here diminishes our strength." They completed the boat in July 1865, nearly 19 months after the shipwreck. They named it Rescue, and though it was small, only 17 feet long, it was their only chance of survival. But not all of them could go. Someone would have to stay behind. Musgrave, Rel, and Fourier would attempt the ocean crossing, leaving McLaren and Harris behind with the hope that help would come once they reached New Zealand. On July 19, 1865, the rescue was launched. McLaren and Harris watched as their companions sailed into the unknown. The journey ahead was dangerous and the sea was unpredictable. They had only basic navigational tools, no charts, only a compass and a quadrant. The odds were against them, but they had no choice but to trust that their companions would reach New Zealand, and that they would eventually be rescued. The first day at sea offers calm waters, providing a much-needed break for the Grafton trio to test the rescue boat's handling before facing more challenging conditions. The boat responds well to the rudder and maintains stability even as the swells rise slightly. By the second day, the weather begins to shift. Dark clouds gather on the horizon and the wind intensifies. What were once manageable seas turn into building swells. Captain Musgrave looks at the darkening sky and mutters, "We're in for a blow." Raynal and Forbes exchange uneasy glances, but they remind themselves that the boat was designed for these conditions. They've prepared for rough seas, but the reality of the situation is different from the theory. The question lingers in the air: would their creation withstand what was coming? By nightfall, the crew is caught in a full gale. Massive waves tower over the tiny boat, lifting it high before dropping it into deep troughs where the water walls surround them. The wind shrieks through their makeshift rigging, while rain and sea spray soak everything and everyone aboard. Captain Musgrave takes the tiller, focusing all his seafaring experience to keep the boat perpendicular to the waves, the only way to prevent it from capsizing. Raynal and Forbes bail constantly, struggling to keep the boat from being swamped. They are facing open ocean survival, one of the most extreme challenges humans can encounter. The constant motion, exposure to the elements, sleep deprivation, and the psychological toll of being surrounded by danger all create immense stress. Studies on small boat ocean voyages reveal that after 72 hours in rough conditions, cognitive functions decrease by up to 60%, and physical coordination worsens dramatically. Hallucinations and impaired decision-making become common. Even experienced sailors make critical errors. The Grafton trio will have to endure these conditions for 5 continuous days, well beyond what experts believe is sustainable without relief. At one point during the storm, a rogue wave larger than the already massive swells strikes the boat broadside. For a moment, it seems certain that the boat will capsize. Water floods over the gunwales and the mast cracks ominously. But the boat remains upright, a testament to Raynal's engineering. The reinforced hull, extra ballast, and flexible joints that absorb shock all prove their worth in this crucial moment. By the third day, navigation becomes nearly impossible. The cloud cover blocks any attempt at celestial navigation, and the compass provides direction but not speed through the water. Their position is uncertain, and the stress of the unknown weighs heavily on the crew. "We could be 50 miles off course by now," Musgrave admits during a brief lull in the storm. But Raynal responds optimistically, "Or we could be right on target." Despite the uncertainty, the psychological pressure mounts. Had they missed Stewart Island completely? Were they being driven south into the emptiness of the Southern Ocean? On the morning of the 5th day, the storm begins to ease. The gale subsides to strong winds, and the towering swells begin to space out, offering the exhausted crew brief moments to recover between waves. But they are pushed to the limits of human endurance. They haven't slept properly in days. They are soaked to the skin and showing early signs of hypothermia despite wearing sealskin clothing. Their hands are raw and bleeding from working with ropes and sails. Then, through a break in the clouds, land appears on the horizon. The distinctive silhouette of mountains, Stewart Island. Against all odds, their primitive navigation has led them to their destination. Their homemade boat has survived conditions that would have sunk professional vessels. Yet their journey isn't over. The waters near the coast are full of reefs and rocks, and their exhausted state means any error could be fatal. The approach to an unfamiliar shore is always one of the most dangerous phases of any voyage. For the Grafton trio, this danger is compounded by several factors. They have no charts of the coastline, they are severely sleep-deprived, and their small boat has limited maneuverability in coastal currents. With no local knowledge of safe landing spots versus dangerous reefs, they must use the last of their strength to navigate toward a sheltered bay. The rescue's shallow draft, which had been a disadvantage in the open ocean, now becomes a blessing, allowing them to pass over reefs that would have been obstacles for larger vessels. After 5 harrowing days at sea, they finally reached the shore of Stewart Island on July 24, 1865. Exhausted but determined, they secure their boat and begin searching for help. Stewart Island in 1865 is sparsely populated, with only a few scattered Maori villages and small European trading posts. Finding these settlements is no easy task. After a day of searching, they encounter a Maori fishing party. With a combination of broken English and gestures, they manage to explain their situation. The Maori, impressed by their survival and respectful of their accomplishment, offer food, shelter, and assistance. Reaching the European settlement at Port Adventure, Captain Musgrave has one focus: securing a vessel to rescue McLaren and Harris. The news of the Grafton castaways' self-rescue spreads quickly through New Zealand's maritime community. Their survival story and boat-building ingenuity become the talk of ports and trading posts. However, Musgrave faces resistance when he appeals for an immediate rescue mission. The southern winter is in full force, and no captain is willing to risk their vessel in the treacherous waters around the Auckland Islands. The New Zealand colonial government has no dedicated rescue vessels, and private ship owners are hesitant to risk their vessels and crews in the dangerous winter conditions. Musgrave's resolve doesn't waver. "I made a promise to those men," he tells a ship owner in Port Adventure. "They trusted me to return for them. They're alive, and I won't abandon them to another winter on that island." After weeks of lobbying, Musgrave finally secures a schooner called the Flying Scud for the mission. The vessel's owner agrees to the rescue, but only if Musgrave serves as the pilot. The preparation for the mission is rushed, but Musgrave ensures that extra provisions are included, knowing the condition his companions are likely in after nearly 2 months on the island. On September 1, 1865, just a month after reaching New Zealand, the Flying Scud departs for the Auckland Islands. The journey south is tense but uneventful compared to their harrowing first crossing. The better weather and a proper ship make this voyage much smoother. As they approach the Auckland Islands, the notorious weather patterns of the region assert themselves. Fog shrouds the coastline, making navigation treacherous. Drawing on his memory and Raynal's precise descriptions, Musgrave guides the Flying Scud into Carnley Harbour. When the crew finally arrives, they find McLaren and Harris. After weeks of uncertainty, the two appear, alive and well, emerging from the trees and waving frantically. The reunion is quiet but deeply emotional. Musgrave's promise has been kept, no man was left behind. The crew of the Flying Scud is astonished by the castaways' accomplishments. They've built a sturdy cabin, a forge, and a workshop, proof of what 5 determined men can achieve with knowledge and cooperation. The survivors spend a day gathering their few possessions, including the journal Musgrave kept during their ordeal, a priceless historical document that will serve as a testament to their incredible survival story. On September 6, 1865, 5 men who had endured 19 months of hardship and survival on Auckland Island boarded the Flying Scud and departed, marking the end of their grueling ordeal. The story of the Grafton castaways soon became a sensation, capturing the attention of people across Australia and New Zealand. Newspapers eagerly published their extraordinary tale of survival and self-rescue, and as their story spread, Captain Musgrave emerged as a minor celebrity. He traveled and lectured on their incredible experiences, sharing the remarkable details of how they had survived against all odds. What sets the story of the Grafton castaways apart is the wealth of documentation available, which paints an unusually vivid picture of their experiences, especially considering it happened in the 19th century. Captain Musgrave's published diary in 1866, titled Castaway on the Auckland Isles, offered a day-by-day account of their survival journey, detailing not only the challenges they faced but also the ingenious innovations that kept them alive. Alongside Musgrave's diary, François Rionol, one of the castaways, wrote his own account, Wrecked on a Reef, 20 Months Among the Auckland Isles. Rionol's narrative provided a technical perspective, offering in-depth descriptions of the engineering solutions they implemented to survive. The survivors also participated in multiple newspaper interviews, which gave varied perspectives of their ordeal. These interviews, along with the remains of their shelter, Epigwait, which still stands today, serve as physical evidence that corroborates the details of their accounts. What emerges is not just a survival story, but a powerful case study of human ingenuity, cooperation, and leadership under extreme conditions. When Captain Musgrave's journal was published, it wasn't just recognized as a gripping adventure. It became a practical guide for survival and leadership. His detailed accounts of their daily routines, their creative problem-solving, and the psychological strategies they used offered lessons that extended far beyond the specifics of their situation. Rionol's book, which came later, served as a technical complement to Musgrave's narrative, shedding light on the engineering principles that enabled them to build a shelter and survive with minimal resources and tools. Together, these two works provided an invaluable resource for understanding how humans can overcome unimaginable challenges through collaboration and innovation. After returning to civilization, the 5 castaways followed different paths, but all carried the extraordinary experience with them. Captain Musgrave continued his maritime career, eventually transitioning to a lighthouse keeper, a role that allowed him to continue safeguarding sailors, though now from solid ground rather than the unpredictable sea. François Rionol, after returning to France, became a celebrated figure in scientific circles, his remarkable application of engineering knowledge under extreme conditions earning him respect from engineering societies. The other survivors, McLaren, Harris, and Fors, went back to their seafaring lives, but in the reserved manner typical of 19th-century working men, they rarely spoke of their harrowing ordeal. Despite the paths they chose, the bond they shared, one forged in the depths of human survival, remained strong. Today, the remnants of Epigwait still stand on Auckland Island, protected as a historic site. Occasionally, research expeditions visit the location, where they can see the stone foundations, the forge, and the walls that serve as a testament to what these 5 men accomplished. Modern survival experts still study the Grafton castaways' experience, drawing lessons from their approach to survival. The principles they applied, leadership, technical knowledge, psychological awareness, and rigorous routine, are still seen as a model for surviving under the harshest of conditions. In contrast, another shipwreck, the Inverall, occurred on the same island chain at nearly the same time. But only 3 of its crew of 19 survived, with the others succumbing to exposure, starvation, and infighting. The stark contrast between the Grafton castaways and the Inverall survivors offers an essential lesson in survival dynamics. The Grafton crew thrived because they maintained discipline, a clear hierarchy, and a cooperative spirit. They quickly constructed shelter, developed food procurement systems, and maintained hygiene and health. In contrast, the Inverall crew descended into chaos, fragmenting into competing factions, remaining exposed to the elements, and suffering from preventable illness. This natural experiment in survival reveals that social factors, cooperation, leadership, and shared knowledge, often determine survival outcomes more than the immediate environment or initial resources. The Grafton castaways' experience is often cited in modern survival training, whether for military personnel, astronauts, or wilderness guides. Their story demonstrates that survival isn't merely about enduring until rescue arrives. It's about building sustainable systems that keep both the body and the mind intact. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of their story is that none of the 5 men suffered lasting physical or psychological damage. In an era where castaways often succumb to both, this was almost unprecedented. The Grafton castaways' tale is more than just a story of survival, it's a testament to what humans can achieve when they combine knowledge, leadership, and cooperation. Their triumph on Auckland Island transformed what could have been a tragic story into one of the most inspiring examples of human resilience in history. They didn't just survive, they mastered their environment, creating a functioning society from wreckage and natural resources. This incredible achievement leaves us with a blueprint for facing the most extreme adversities, not only surviving them but emerging stronger and more capable. The Grafton castaways are proof that even in the harshest conditions, humans can not only endure, they can triumph. If you found this story of ingenuity and survival as inspiring as I did, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you the most extraordinary true stories of human resilience and innovation against impossible odds. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And if you think the Grafton castaways' remarkable achievement might inspire someone else, be sure to share it with them. Thanks for watching. Until next time.